The U.S. Titan was an enigma, appearing without warning on the edge of the galaxy. Its massive form cut through the void like a harbinger of something far more significant than anyone could comprehend. The Titan was not just a ship, it was the manifestation of humanity's determination, their resolve to never be overlooked, and the embodiment of their relentless spirit. The ship's exterior gleamed, a mix of sleek, modern lines and battle-worn scars, a reflection of humanity's journey from fledgling species to apex predator. As the Titan drifted toward the galactic core, the first wave of alien forces arrived. The Dracari, a race of towering reptilian beings known for their brute strength and unrelenting aggression, were the first to engage. They arrived in a fleet of enormous battlecruisers, their weapons crackling with energy. They fired without hesitation, believing they could break the human ship with a single, decisive strike. But the Titan didn't move as they expected. It didn't retaliate immediately. Instead, it seemed to absorb the blasts, its shields shimmering with every hit, and then, with brutal efficiency, it struck back. The Dracari ships, once imposing, now seemed fragile in comparison. Within moments, the Titan unleashed a barrage of energy weapons, ripping through the Dracari fleet with calculated precision. The sheer speed of the Titan's response, how quickly it adapted, how ruthlessly it countered the aggression, sent a chill down the spine of every alien who watched from the safety of their own space. The battle was over in minutes, but the shockwaves it sent throughout the galaxy would last far longer. The Titan didn't just win. It sent a clear message. Humanity was not here to negotiate, to ask for a seat at the table, or to beg for survival. They were here to claim their place, and if anyone stood in their way, they would be obliterated. The galaxy's reaction was swift and severe. The Galactic Council, a united front of the galaxy's most powerful species, called an emergency meeting. Representatives from the Orcs, the Saurian, and even the enigmatic Drill, an ancient, mysterious species known for their mastery of both technology and manipulation, gathered, each brimming with their own sense of superiority. They had seen the Titan's destruction, but none of them fully believed that the humans could be as dangerous as their sudden appearance suggested. They had watched entire fleets fall to the Titan's firepower, but still there was hesitation. Surely, no species could truly pose a threat to the balance of power that had stood for eons. The Orcs, a race of multi-limbed beings with shimmering crystalline exoskeletons, were the first to break the silence. "We should respond immediately. A single human ship has no place in our galaxy," their leader declared, his voice steady and filled with the arrogance of a species that had been the dominant force for centuries. But then, from the darkest corner of the chamber, a voice interrupted, a voice that made the room fall silent. The Drill envoy, an impossibly thin figure clad in a dark, hooded robe, spoke with an eerie calmness. "Do not underestimate them," the Drill representative warned. "The Titan is but a glimpse of what they are capable of. The human spirit is unlike anything you've ever encountered. If they can be this powerful with just one warship, imagine what they could do with an entire fleet." The room grew tense as the reality of the situation began to settle in. The galaxy's ruling powers had never faced an enemy like this. The humans, despite their technological youth, had managed to break the very foundation of their belief that no one could challenge the balance of the galaxy. Now, it wasn't a matter of whether humanity would be crushed. It was whether they would be able to find a way to coexist with this unyielding force or be destroyed. Across the void, the Titan sailed forward, its captain resolute. The galaxy had no idea what was coming. Humanity had arrived, and they would not be ignored. In the days following the destruction of the Dracari fleet, the galaxy's ruling powers were in a state of upheaval. The Titan had made its presence felt, and the shockwaves of its arrival were felt across every major faction. No one knew exactly what to expect next, but one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Humanity was not just another species in the galaxy. They were something altogether different. The Titan continued its journey deeper into the heart of the galaxy, leaving behind a trail of burned-out alien vessels and fractured coalitions. The once overconfident alien leaders began to make mistakes that would cost them dearly. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. The Titan's next target was the Saurian fleet, a race of telepathic beings who had long relied on their mental prowess to control and manipulate other species. The Saurians believed that their advanced psychic abilities gave them an insurmountable advantage in any conflict. But when the Titan arrived in their sector, they quickly realized that the human crew was unlike anything they had encountered before. The Saurians launched an ambush, using their psychic powers to attempt to disrupt the Titan's systems and bend the minds of its crew. For a moment, it seemed as if the battle might be in their favor. But the humans were prepared. They had anticipated the Saurian psychic attacks. The crew of the Titan had undergone rigorous mental conditioning, training themselves to resist even the most powerful telepathic influences. And so, the Saurian fleet found itself locked in a battle it could not win. While their psychic assault wreaked havoc on weaker-willed species, it was useless against humans who had learned to channel their mental strength. Instead of crumbling under psychic pressure, the humans fought back with ferocity, using their knowledge of the Saurians' tactics against them. The Titan's weapons unleashed a series of precise, brutal strikes, targeting the heart of the Saurian fleet. One by one, their ships were crippled, their telepathic commanders falling silent as the Titan's crew proved that sheer willpower could defeat even the most advanced mental forces. In the aftermath of the battle, as the wreckage of the Saurian fleet drifted in space, the message sent by the Titan was unmistakable. Humanity was not just technologically advanced. They were adaptable, resilient, and relentless. They had turned the Saurians' greatest strength into their greatest weakness, showing that even the most powerful psychic abilities could not overcome human ingenuity and strength. As word spread of the Titan's victory, the galaxy's leaders convened once more. But this time, their tone had shifted. There was no more mockery, no more confidence. Instead, there was fear of what humanity might do next. The once formidable galactic factions, who had long seen themselves as the dominant powers, now began to question their own place in the galaxy. Meanwhile, aboard the Titan, Captain Rook stood at the helm, staring out at the vast, starry expanse. Their eyes were hard, unyielding. This war wasn't just about survival. It was about something more. It was about showing the galaxy that humanity was not a race to be ignored, to be manipulated, or to be crushed. The universe would now know that humanity would never bow, never retreat, and never surrender. The Titan was no longer just a ship. It was a symbol of defiance, of resilience, and of the unstoppable will of humanity. With the Titan's recent victories still reverberating throughout the galaxy, new dynamics began to emerge. The humans, once dismissed as insignificant, were now a force to be reckoned with. Their swift and unrelenting attacks had crippled two of the galaxy's most powerful factions, but what was even more concerning to the rest of the galaxy was the humans' ability to adapt and overcome every obstacle. As humanity's reputation spread, some alien factions began to consider a new strategy: ally with the humans before they became an unstoppable juggernaut. It was the Tarax, who had once been the loudest in calling for the immediate destruction of humanity, that made the first move. A diplomatic envoy, led by the Tarax's High Chancellor Varen, arrived at the Titan's location, requesting a formal meeting. The message was clear. The Tarax wanted to negotiate. Captain Rook received the envoy in the Titan's war room, where the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The Tarax delegation, massive beings covered in iridescent armor, entered with an air of superiority, but their once imposing presence was now tempered by an obvious undercurrent of caution. It was clear that their previous confidence had been shaken. "We offer an alliance," Varen declared, his deep voice vibrating the air. "The galaxy stands on the brink of war, and your people have proven themselves capable of defeating any foe. Together, we can reshape the future, secure our places in the galaxy, and ensure that no one dares challenge us again." Captain Rook studied Varen closely, eyes narrowed. Rook knew this wasn't just an offer of friendship. It was a calculated move. The Tsaraks saw the writing on the wall. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now they were scrambling to secure a position of power before they were overtaken. "I don't trust you," Captain Rook said, his voice cold. "Your people were among the first to label us weak. Now, when we have proven our strength, you come asking for a partnership. Why should I believe your words?" Varen's gaze hardened. "We have seen your power, human, and we recognize it. We wish to offer you a position of respect, power that would rival any other in this galaxy. But we also seek protection from those who would tear us down, and your fleet has proven itself to be the hammer that could strike down any who stand in our way." The captain didn't respond immediately. His mind was already working, calculating the potential of this alliance. Was it worth the risk? Would the Tsaraks turn on them the moment humanity was in a weaker position? Or could this alliance provide humanity with the resources they needed to consolidate their power? Before Rook could respond, another transmission came in, this one from the Dreel, a race known for their shadowy dealings and incomprehensible motives. Their ambassador, a cloaked figure with translucent skin, offered a different sort of proposal. Unlike the Tsaraks, the Dreel were not interested in military might. Instead, they spoke of trade, of sharing knowledge, and of the quiet influence they could offer humanity. But the captain was no fool. Rook could see through the veiled language and knew that the Dreel were not offering friendship. They were offering control through manipulation, subtlety, and perhaps even subterfuge. "We don't need your manipulation," Rook replied flatly. "What we need is respect, and we will take it by force if necessary." As the Titan continued its journey, these diplomatic efforts sparked a new phase in humanity's rise. Some species were already lining up to offer alliances, eager to join humanity's march to power. But Captain Rook remained wary. The galaxy was vast, filled with enemies and allies alike, and in the end, the only ally humanity could truly trust was itself. With the fate of the galaxy now hanging in the balance, humanity's ultimate challenge was becoming clear. Could they unite these fractured alliances, or would they be forced to fight every faction for supremacy? The moment the Titan broke through the edges of the Saurian Empire, the galaxy knew that something had changed forever. What had begun as a series of small victories for humanity quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. The galaxy's ruling factions, now on high alert, had put aside their differences, however temporary, and united against humanity. In their eyes, the Titan was no longer just a ship. It was a declaration of war. Humanity's time of reckoning had come. In response to the growing threat, the most powerful alien coalitions, led by the Dreel, Tsaraks, and the unified forces of the Drakari, began massing an armada that would dwarf anything humanity had ever encountered. The combined fleet was a monstrous sight, hundreds of warships, each one a fortress unto itself, equipped with weapons that could vaporize entire cities with a single shot. Their goal was simple: destroy the Titan, annihilate humanity's warship, and wipe out the growing threat to their reign of control. Captain Rook knew what was at stake. This was the moment where humanity would either fall back into the shadows or stand and fight for its place in the galaxy. The Titan had already proven its power in small skirmishes, but now they were up against an overwhelming force. The odds were not in their favor. The battle began in a flash of blinding light. The alien fleet descended on the Titan, sending wave after wave of destruction in its path. Energy beams lanced through space, colliding with the Titan's shields, shaking the ship to its core. But the Titan held firm. The human crew, battle-hardened and resolute, activated their countermeasures with mechanical precision, firing off volley after volley of laser and missile barrages. The first wave of alien ships was reduced to fragments as the Titan's point defense systems tore them apart before they could even get close. However, the alien fleets were not so easily beaten. They had learned from their earlier losses, adapting their strategies in real time. The drill ships, known for their stealth technology, now moved in the shadows, slipping in and out of the battle, striking where the Titan was weakest. The Orcs unleashed devastating ion storms to weaken the Titan's shields, while the Dracari capital ships attempted to break through with brute force, launching massive energy projectiles at the Titan's hull. It was a battle unlike any humanity had ever fought before, desperate, brutal, and without mercy. The Titan's crew fought with everything they had, but it was clear that the aliens were willing to do anything to end humanity's rise. Every pulse of energy from the alien fleet seemed to carry the weight of the galaxy's fear. Humanity was not supposed to be here. They were not meant to be the apex predator of the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity was an anomaly, a mistake, and it had to be corrected. Captain Rook stood at the helm, watching as the battle raged on. The Titan was taking hits, but humanity's spirit remained unbroken. He knew that the war was far from over, but for the first time, he realized something that sent a shiver through him. This fight wasn't just about military strength. It was about humanity's will to survive, to endure, and to never back down. And in that moment, Rook knew that the galaxy would soon understand that humans didn't just fight to win. They fought to live. As the Titan pushed forward, tearing through the alien forces with ferocity and precision, a dark thought flickered in Rook's mind. This was just the beginning. If humanity was to truly take its place in the galaxy, it would have to face even greater trials. The worst was yet to come. The battle raged across multiple sectors of the galaxy, with the Titan at its center. Humanity had proven itself a formidable opponent, but the combined might of the galaxy's major factions, Orcs, Dracari, and Drill, was relentless. The Titan's crew fought valiantly, but the relentless barrage of alien firepower began to take its toll. The ship's shields flickered dangerously, and the hull groaned under the strain of repeated impacts. But Captain Rook was undeterred. He knew there was still hope, and it lay in humanity's most valuable and least understood asset, ingenuity. In the heart of the Titan, deep within its lower levels, a group of scientists and engineers worked feverishly. They had been preparing for this moment, when humanity's survival depended on a weapon no one had ever seen before. It was a project of unprecedented ambition, developed in secret and hidden within the very fabric of the ship itself. It was a weapon born of human creativity and desperation, the Eclipse Cannon. The Eclipse Cannon was unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. It was not a conventional energy weapon, nor a missile or torpedo. It was a device that manipulated gravity itself, creating a localized singularity, a black hole that could devour everything in its vicinity. The plan was simple. Use the Eclipse Cannon to destabilize the massive alien armada, creating a catastrophic gravitational anomaly that would tear their fleets apart. However, the Eclipse Cannon came with risks. The energy required to fire it was enormous, and there was a very real chance that it could overwhelm the Titan's systems, causing catastrophic failure. The scientists and engineers knew they were gambling with humanity's future. If they succeeded, they would change the course of the war. But if they failed, it could mean the destruction of the Titan and every soul aboard. "Ready to fire, Captain," came the voice over the comm, steady but tinged with urgency. Rook's hand hovered over the control panel. His mind raced. He understood the consequences of firing the Eclipse Cannon. It could turn the tide of the war, but it was no guarantee. The cannon required precise targeting, and the alien fleets were no easy targets. If the shot missed, the backlash could be catastrophic. Yet he knew there was no other option. If humanity was to survive, it had to win this battle. "Do it," Rook ordered, his voice calm and resolute. With a deep hum that reverberated through the ship's hull, the Titan's systems powered up. The Eclipse Cannon came online, its massive energy reserves flooding the ship's core. Outside, the alien fleets continued their assault, unaware of the impending catastrophe. The combined might of the Tarax, Drakari, and Driel armadas surged forward, ready to obliterate humanity's last defense. Then, with a deafening roar, the Eclipse cannon fired. The beam of energy shot out into the void, bending the fabric of space itself. A swirling black vortex appeared at the heart of the alien fleet, its gravitational pull instantly disrupting everything in its vicinity. Ships were torn apart, dragged toward the singularity like moths to a flame. The alien forces, unprepared for such an attack, could only watch in horror as their fleet collapsed into chaos. But the battle was far from over. The Eclipse cannon's power wasn't without consequences. As the gravitational distortion spread, the Titan shuddered violently, its systems straining under the massive strain. Captain Rook's hands gripped the console tightly as alarms blared throughout the ship. The weapon had worked, but it had come at a price. The Titan was now caught in the pull of the singularity it had created, and the crew would have mere minutes before they too were consumed. "Captain, we need to escape," a voice shouted over the comm. The chaos was palpable. The crew's survival now depended on one last gamble. But Rook knew something the crew didn't. The Titan had done its job. Humanity had just sent a message that the galaxy could not ignore. They had forced the galaxy's hand, and in doing so, humanity had taken the first step toward changing the course of history. The Titan trembled as it veered dangerously close to the gravitational singularity that had been unleashed by the Eclipse cannon. The entire crew braced for the inevitable, death or destruction. The massive black hole at the heart of the alien fleet continued to expand, devouring everything in its path, but the Titan was now within its pull. Alarms blared throughout the ship as systems began to overload. The ship's engines, straining under the immense pressure, began to sputter, struggling to maintain any semblance of control. In the command center, Captain Rook stood frozen, his eyes locked on the screen as the chaotic mess of swirling space threatened to pull them in. "We're losing power, Captain," Lieutenant Hawk called out. "Engines are offline. We can't fight the pull." Rook's heart pounded in his chest, but his mind remained clear. There was only one option now. He quickly initiated the emergency protocol. The ship's primary engines would have to be sacrificed for one final burst of speed. The risk of losing the Titan completely was high, but it was their only shot at survival. "Prepare to activate the emergency thrusters," Rook ordered, his voice firm despite the chaos around him. "And brace for impact." His hand hovered over the console, ready to execute the desperate maneuver. For a brief moment, time seemed to stretch, and Rook felt the weight of every decision that had led them to this point. This was no longer just about victory. It was about survival. Humanity had taken on the entire galaxy, and now, at the precipice of annihilation, they would either rise or fall together. With a final, decisive press of a button, Rook activated the emergency thrusters. A burst of light surged from the Titan's rear, propelling the ship away from the expanding singularity. The force sent the crew tumbling, and the Titan lurched violently. The gravitational pull of the black hole threatened to tear the ship apart, but for a brief moment, the ship was free, shooting away from the chaos that had consumed the alien fleet. Captain Rook watched as the Titan strained to break free. "We got this," he muttered under his breath, not sure if he was reassuring his crew or himself. The ship's hull groaned, but miraculously, the emergency thrusters fought against the pull, slowly but surely pushing the Titan out of the singularity's grasp. Then, with a final shudder, the ship broke free, thrusting into the cold emptiness of space. The swirling black hole behind them began to collapse in on itself, consuming the remnants of the alien fleet that had been caught in its wake. The galaxy had never seen such destruction. A single human warship, wielding a weapon that could reshape the cosmos, had just destroyed the combined might of the galaxy's most powerful factions. Silence descended over the bridge of the Titan, and for a moment, no one spoke. The crew was exhausted, their bodies battered from the intensity of the battle, their nerves frayed by the ever-present threat of death. But there was something else in the air, something heavier. It was the realization that humanity had not only survived, but had changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "Damage report," Rook said, his voice calm. The crew scrambled to assess the situation, but it was clear that the Titan had endured. They had lost precious time in repairs, and parts of the ship had sustained significant damage. But the Titan remained intact. "We're still alive," Hawk said, glancing up from the control panel. "Against all odds, Captain, we made it." Rook allowed himself a small smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We've made it, for now." The Titan had won its most important battle. The message humanity had sent was clear. They were not here to be cowed or destroyed. They had taken their place on the galactic stage, and no one would ever forget what had just occurred. But as the Titan sailed onward, the captain knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had felt the wrath of humanity's resolve, but there were more battles to come. Humanity had awakened a sleeping giant, and its hunger for survival and dominance was far from sated. The dawn of a new age had arrived. The Titan drifted in the quiet of space, its engines sputtering from the aftermath of the battle. The hum of life support systems and the soft murmur of the crew were the only sounds to fill the silence. Captain Rook stood on the command deck, his hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the stars. The galaxy had been forced to take notice of humanity's power, but now, as they sailed deeper into enemy space, a new challenge awaited them. The Titan had devastated the alien armada, but the cost had been high. The ship was battered, its crew exhausted, and the reality of what they had done was beginning to settle in. They had dealt a decisive blow, but the galaxy was still vast, and the powerful factions they had just defeated would not let their humiliation stand. Now they would come for humanity. Rook turned toward his crew. The tension in the air was palpable. Despite the victory, they were still walking a tightrope between survival and annihilation. "Captain," Lieutenant Hawk said, her voice breaking through his thoughts, "we've received multiple messages from the remaining factions. They're calling for a ceasefire, some of them asking for talks." Rook raised an eyebrow. "Talks? Indeed. They've never offered us this before," Hawk replied. "But now, after what we did, it seems they're willing to negotiate. They want to figure out what humanity wants from them." Rook let out a breath. It wasn't the news he had expected. "What do you think, Hawk? Are we ready to negotiate?" Hawk hesitated, clearly unsure. "It's not about what we want. It's about what they want. The galaxy's powers are on the defensive now. They're terrified of what we might do next." Rook's gaze hardened. "And that's exactly why we need to control the narrative. We've proven our strength, but if we let them dictate terms, we're playing into their hands. We've shown that we will fight to the end, but we must now decide what we want from them, not the other way around." As the crew continued to prepare for the next stage of the war, Rook and his officers gathered in the war room. The table was strewn with maps of the galaxy and the fractured remnants of the galactic factions that had once been so sure of their dominance. Each faction had its own strengths and weaknesses, and Rook knew they needed to take a strategic approach if they were to avoid further bloodshed. "We need leverage," Rook said, his voice firm. "The Tsaraks, the Driel, and the Drakari. They need us more than we need them. If we want peace, it's on our terms, and they will have to recognize humanity as a legitimate force. We will no longer be the prey." His eyes swept over the faces of his officers, each one silently processing the gravity of his words. The Titan had just rewritten the rules of war, and now humanity was being forced into a leadership position they had never asked for. No longer could they remain in the shadows. They were at the forefront of galactic power. "We will hold our ground," Rook continued. "We will negotiate, but we won't compromise on our sovereignty. This war isn't over, and it won't be until humanity has secured its place as an equal in the galaxy." The room fell silent, as everyone understood the weight of the decision. They were not just soldiers anymore. They were leaders in a new order. The galaxy might have forced them into this position, but it was humanity's time to shape the future. Rook looked out the viewport once more, staring at the stars beyond. No more running, he thought. No more hiding. Humanity had arrived. The Titan drifted toward a rendezvous point with the emissaries from the remaining galactic factions. Captain Rook stood in the observation deck, gazing at the stars as they passed by. His face was a mask of contemplation, one that reflected the gravity of the moment. Humanity's place in the galaxy had irrevocably changed, and now, the next steps would determine whether they would be seen as conquerors, equals, or something far more dangerous. The negotiations were set to take place at a neutral location, a moon on the edge of a forgotten system. It was an appropriate place for what was about to unfold. There, under the cold light of distant stars, the surviving galactic powers would decide how to deal with humanity. Rook turned as Lieutenant Hawk entered the room, her eyes shadowed by the burden of the task ahead. "Captain, the alien envoys are en route. We're ready for the meeting," Hawk said, her voice steady but tinged with uncertainty. "The Tsarax have sent their High Chancellor, Varen. The Driel are sending their mysterious counselor, Saz. And the Drakari, well, they've been a bit more aggressive in their demands." Rook nodded. "Aggressive, but not unreasonable. If they want war, they'll get it. But if they want peace, we'll take it on our terms." Hawk paused before speaking again. "I think we both know that peace, Captain, is a fragile thing. We've just destroyed their fleets. They'll never forgive that. They'll be looking for ways to test us, to push us to see if we'll back down." Rook's jaw tightened. He had no illusions about the nature of these negotiations. The galaxy's powers were afraid of what humanity had become. They had seen what the Titan could do, and they feared the ripple effect. The balance of power was shifting, and they were no longer in control of the outcome. "Let them test us," Rook said, his voice low and unwavering. "We've already proven we will never back down. And if they think we'll just bow to their demands, they're in for a rude awakening." The Titan arrived at the neutral moon, where an array of ships from the various factions were waiting. The Titan was the last to arrive, a symbol of humanity's undeniable influence. As Rook and his senior officers boarded the transport ship that would take them down to the surface, the captain's mind raced with possibilities. This meeting was a pivotal moment in the history of the galaxy. The stakes had never been higher. On the surface, the alien delegations waited, their ships standing like looming monoliths against the barren landscape. The air was tense as Rook and his crew descended from the transport, flanked by their guards. The Tsarax, towering and gleaming in their battle armor, glared down at the humans with unspoken contempt. The Driel, enigmatic as ever, seemed to shift in and out of focus as though they were not fully of this reality. And the Drakari, their eyes burning with a mix of hatred and respect, stood ready to push for domination. But as Rook stepped forward, he understood the truth. This wasn't just a meeting for survival. It was the birth of a new era. Humanity was no longer a bystander in the galaxy's conflicts. They had become the center of it all. Every word, every gesture would matter. The fate of the galaxy rested not on the shoulders of the alien factions, but on humanity's willingness to stand its ground. "We've come here for peace," Rook said, his voice carrying over the vastness of the barren landscape. "But understand this. Peace will only come if it is on humanity's terms. We will not bow to your demands, and we will never be anyone's subjugates again." His words hung in the air like a challenge, and the galaxy would soon learn that humanity had truly arrived, not just as survivors, but as leaders.